Hello friends, welcome to the HFY Ode, where we bring you new science fiction stories, a new world, a new adventure. And yes, there is no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So let's start this journey, and please subscribe my channel if you like the stories and press the bell icon for the latest updates. Let's have a story. Okay.
Ambassador Elias Vance had been standing in front of the Galactic Council for exactly 47 minutes, and his left knee had begun making a sound like a sad accordion. Actually, sad accordion was an understatement. His dress shoes were 2 sizes too small because the quartermaster had confused him with Ambassador Chen, who had feet like canoe paddles. His tie clip was digging into his throat like a tiny metal assassin. And somewhere in the back of the chamber, a species of crystalline arthropods kept clicking their mandibles in a rhythm that perfectly matched the worst song Elias had ever heard on a cruise ship in 2009. He hated that song. The primitive carbon-based life forms of Sol 3, Drone, the lead prosecutor, a floating gas bag from the Andromeda Nebula who somehow managed to sound smug despite having no face, have committed exactly 247 violations of Galactic Commons Code 14, subsection C, paragraphs 3 through 9. Elias blinked. He had read the charge sheet. It was 6,000 pages long. The first violation was unauthorized atmospheric modulation, which, as far as he could tell, meant clouds. Humans made clouds. Apparently that was a war crime. The second violation was unlicensed biological replication. Bobbies. They meant bobbies. The third through 247th violations were similarly insane. His personal favorite was violation 91, excessive production of dihydrogen monoxide without proper filtration permits. Water. They were charging humanity with making water. The council chamber stretched upward for what looked like miles. Thousands of species floated, crawled, slithered, or vibrated in place across floating platforms. Every single one of them was staring at him like he was a cockroach that had learned to wear a suit. Elias shifted his weight. His knee popped again. The presiding officer, a massive gelatinous cybernetic hive mind known only as the Collective, pulsed a deep purple. That was laughter. Elias had learned that trick in the first 5 minutes. Purple meant they were mocking him. Ambassador Vance. The Collective's voice came from everywhere at once, like 1,000 parents disappointed at the same time. Your species has been classified as a Category 3 planetary anomaly. You have 72 standard galactic hours to evacuate your home world before sterilization begins. 72 hours. 3 days. Elias had a wife named Margaret. She baked sourdough bread on Sundays and left flower handprints on his good jackets. He had a daughter named Lena who had just learned to say Dada and had recently discovered that dropping food off her high chair was the funniest joke ever invented. He had a dog named Pickles who ate socks and threw up on the rug with aggressive confidence. 3 days. The council has voted, the Collective continued, flickering to a smug orange. 14,207 in favor, 3 opposed, 12 abstaining due to hibernation cycles. Elias looked at the 3 opposing votes. They were a delegation of fungal sapients who had opposed everything for the last 600 years because they were legally required to oppose the first motion of every session. It was in their religious texts. So 0 real opposition. The gasbag prosecutor swelled with pride. The humans may now offer their final statement before the council records its judgment. Final statement. Elias had prepared a speech. It was a good speech. He'd worked on it for 3 weeks. It had metaphors about resilience and a heartfelt section about humanity's artistic achievements and a closing paragraph that quoted Carl Sagan. Margaret had cried when he practiced it in the living room. Pickles had eaten the first draft, which Elias chose to interpret as canine approval. But standing here, surrounded by 14,000 alien species who had already decided to erase his entire planet, Elias realized something important. The speech wouldn't work. These beings didn't care about art. They didn't care about love. They didn't care about the way Lena laughed when you pretended to eat her toes. They cared about paperwork. That was the thing Elias had learned in his 6 months as humanity's last diplomat. The galaxy ran on forms. Every action required approvals. Every approval required signatures. Every signature required a notary, and every notary required a blood sample, and every blood sample required a separate form just to authorize the collection of the blood sample. The council wasn't a government. It was an HOA with star destroyers. So instead of his speech, Elias reached into his jacket pocket. The council went quiet. 14,000 species watched as he pulled out a single folded piece of paper. He unfolded it slowly. The paper was standard human letter size. It had a coffee stain in the top right corner from that morning's breakfast. Margaret had drawn a small heart on the back because she always did that when he traveled. On the front, typed in Galactic standard font size 14, was a single number. 60. Elias held it up. 60, he said. His voice echoed through the chamber. The collective flickered yellow confusion. Ambassador Vance, what is the meaning of? Elias folded the paper, tucked it back into his pocket and started counting. 59. He said it calmly, quietly, like a man announcing the time. 58. The gas bag prosecutor deflated slightly. This is not a recognized diplomatic. 57. A delegation of insectoids began chittering in alarm. They had no idea what was happening, but the human was counting down from a number, and countdowns in their culture were always followed by explosions. 56. The collective pulsed a warning red. Ambassador Vance, you will explain your actions immediately. Elias smiled. It was not a nice smile. 55. He turned and walked toward the exit. The council erupted. 3 light years from Earth, aboard the living bioship Womb of Regret, Ambassador Vec felt his third stomach digesting itself. Vec was a glut, a species that looked like a cross between a slug, a filing cabinet, and a very stressed accountant. He had 17 stomachs, 6 hearts, and a lingering sense that he had chosen the wrong career path. His body was a pale, glistening gray, and he wore the ceremonial sash of a mid-level diplomatic attaché, which was essentially a fancy napkin with medals stapled to it. He was also, secretly, desperately, praying that the invasion of Earth would fail. Not because he liked humans. He had never met a human. He didn't even know what they smelled like, and his species could identify a target civilization by scent alone. No, Vec wanted the invasion to fail because his rival, Ambassador Gorm the Unbearable, had been placed in charge of the operation. If Gorm succeeded, he would be promoted to High Executor of Sector 7, which was the job Vec had been angling for since he was a larval glut, with 17 stomachs full of ambition. So Vec had spent the last 3 weeks quietly sabotaging everything. He had accidentally rerouted the ammunition shipments to a black hole. He had mistakenly filed the fleet's navigational coordinates in the recycling bin. He had inadvertently scheduled the entire ground invasion force for mandatory sensitivity training that lasted exactly as long as the invasion window. And now, as he stood on the bridge of the Womb of Regret, watching the live feed of the Galactic Council chamber, he saw a human man counting down from 55 and walking out the door. "Report," Vec said, his voice a wet gurgle. The bridge was alive, literally. The walls pulsed with veins. The floor had a heartbeat. The control consoles were made of hardened cartilage. A crew of 20 different species worked frantically at their stations, none of them looking happy. "Ambassador Vance has left the council chamber," reported a floating eyeball creature named Quill. He is currently in the hallway, still counting. He's at 47 now. What is he counting down to? Unknown, sir, but we intercepted a transmission from his personal communicator. He sent a single message to Earth. Vec's fourth stomach cramped. What did it say? Quill hesitated. It said, quote, "Start the clock. Love, Dad," end quote. The bridge went silent. Dad, Vec repeated. Is that a military rank? Unknown, sir. Human familial structures are not well documented. Vec's sixth stomach joined the cramping. He had a bad feeling. The same bad feeling he'd had when he ate expired rations as a young glut and spent 3 days expelling his own intestinal lining. Get me everything on this human, he ordered. Personal data, credit records, social media. What does he eat? What does he fear? What makes him angry? Quill's single eyeball rotated in alarm. Sir, you're asking us to. Do it, and someone find out what Dad means. 23 minutes later, the intelligence report arrived. Vec read it in his private quarters, which were technically a pulsating cyst on the bioship's port side. The report smelled like ozone and regret. Subject VANCE, ELIS, human male, 47 standard CYCLES. Occupation, diplomat last remaining. Status counting. Psychological profile. Subject exhibits high tolerance for stress. Known to drink a beverage called coffee at volumes that would be lethal to most galactic species. Has a spouse and offspring. Owns a small quadruped known as Pickles that appears to consume non-food items with alarming regularity. Dietary preference CES. Sandwiches, specifically turkey and Swiss on rye. A fermented grain liquid called beer. Something called Taco Tuesday. Day-specific food loyalty suggests ritualistic behavior. Personal COMMUNICATONS, recent. To spouse, don't wait up. The galaxy is insane. To daughter, video recording. Dada loves you, be good for mommy. Subject appeared to be crying. To unknown recipient. If they want a war, give them forms. Lots of forms. Vec's 11th stomach lurched. Forms. The human had said forms. That was when Vec remembered something. Something terrible. Something he had buried in the deepest part of his memory, right next to the time he had accidentally confessed his sabotage plans to a potted plant that turned out to be a government spy. The Intergalactic Regulatory Body. The IRB was the most powerful organization in the galaxy, more powerful than the Council, more powerful than any fleet. The IRB controlled the paperwork. Every military action required IRB approval. Every invasion required IRB authorization. Every single bomb dropped required a signed Form 7 Gamma, which expired after 45 standard days unless renewed in triplicate. Gorm the Unbearable had filed the invasion authorization for Earth 45 days ago. Vec pulled up the file with shaking tentacles. He stared at the date stamp. He started laughing. It was not a nice laugh. It was the laugh of a glut who had just realized that his rival's entire military campaign was technically illegal and that the human diplomat knew it. The countdown. The human wasn't counting down to an explosion. He was counting down to expiration. Sir, we have a problem. Quill's eyeball floated into Vec's quarters without knocking. That was the problem with eyeball creatures. They had no sense of privacy because they technically had no sense of doors. What now? Vec asked, already knowing the answer. The collective has intercepted additional human communications. Their linguistic database is concerning. Quill projected a holographic screen. On it were thousands of human phrases, each one highlighted with a growing red warning symbol. Break a leg. Literal translation suggests self-harm as encouragement. Spill the tea. Interpreted as a threat to contaminate beverage supplies. Kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Confirmed evidence of avian genocide. Bite the bullet. Ritualized self-injury for courage. The pot calling the kettle black. Racial commentary involving cookware, meaning unclear, threat level high. Vec's eyes across all 17 stomachs widened. They speak like this to each other. Constantly, sir. Our analysts have concluded that humans are either insane or using a complex code designed to confuse galactic surveillance. Which one is more likely? Quill hesitated. Both, sir, both is more likely. The bridge alarm blared. Vec slithered back to his station, his ceremonial napkin flapping behind him. What now? Gorm the Unbearable's face appeared on the main screen. Gorm was a massive reptilian creature with teeth like shattered glass and an ego like a collapsing star. He was currently standing on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable Fury, looking extremely unhappy. Ambassador Vec, Gorm snarled. Explain why my ammunition shipments are in a black hole. Supply chain issues, Vec said smoothly. Very common paperwork error. Paperwork error? Yes, someone filed Form 12 Beta instead of Form 12 Beta 2. Tragic. I've submitted a correction request. Should be processed in 6 to 8 weeks. Gorm's eye twitched. The invasion is in 71 hours. Best of luck. The Council has ordered me to tell you that if this operation fails, you will be held personally responsible. Vec's third stomach did a happy flip. Understood, I accept full responsibility. In writing, I'll file the form right now. He hung up before Gorm could respond, and immediately filed a report taking full responsibility for everything. He also filed a separate report taking credit for everything that went right, just in case. This was how Glutz operated. Meanwhile, back on the Womb of Regret's intelligence deck, a junior analyst named Zix, a small furry creature with 6 legs and a caffeine dependency, made a discovery. Sir, Zix said, raising a trembling paw, I found something in the human's personal data. Vec slithered over, show me. Zix projected a series of social media posts from Elias Vance. Post 1 3 weeks ago. If I have to fill out one more form today, I'm going to literally combust. Galactic bureaucracy is a nightmare. Diplomat problems. Post 2 weeks ago. My daughter asked me what I do at work. I said I argue with aliens about clouds. She said that sounds boring. She's not wrong. Post 3 yesterday. Final statement tomorrow. They're going to laugh at me. That's fine. I've got a surprise for them. Let's just say I've been reading the fine print. Vec's hearts all beat faster. Reading the fine print, he whispered. He read the fine print. Sir. Zix, pull up the intergalactic regulatory body's invasion authorization forms, specifically Form 7 Gamma, the expiration clause. Zix's paws flew across the keyboard. The document appeared. Form 7 Gamma, Planetary Invasion Authorization. Section 14, Paragraph 3, Subsection C. This authorization expires 45/45, standard galactic days from the date of issuance, unless renewed in triplicate with the intergalactic regulatory body. Office of Planetary Affairs, Room 7, Corridor 12, Wing 14, Floor 3, Building 2, Administrative Complex, Capital Planet. Renewal requests must be filed no less than 72 hours prior to expiration. Late renewals will be subject to a penalty of 47,000 additional forms and a mandatory hearing before the subcommittee on subcommittees. Vec counted backwards on his tentacles. Gorm had filed the authorization 45 days ago. The invasion was scheduled for 72 hours from now. But the deadline for renewal was 72 hours prior to expiration. Which meant... Zix, Vec said slowly. What time did Gorm file the original authorization? Zix checked. 1400 hours, sir. And what time is it now? 1358 hours, sir. Vec's entire body went cold. The renewal deadline was 2 minutes ago. The bridge went silent. Then from the council chamber live feed, a sound echoed through the speakers. 4, said Elias Vance. He had returned to the chamber. The council had frozen in place, watching him. 3. The collective pulsed a panicked white. Ambassador Vance, we demand you stop this immediately. 2. Gorm's face reappeared on Vec's screen. What is he doing? Someone stop him. 1. Elias smiled. 3 weeks before Elias started counting, a human cargo ship called the SS Margaret's Revenge had drifted through the wrong sector of space. The ship was old. It was held together by duct tape and the stubbornness of its captain, a woman named Helen who had been hauling freight for 40 years and had never once filed her taxes correctly. The Revenge had a malfunctioning navigation system, a leaky reactor, and a coffee machine that produced a liquid Helen called motor oil and drank by the gallon. By accident, a navigation error caused by Helen falling asleep at the helm while watching Die Hard for the 30th time. The Revenge had entered restricted Galactic Council space. The Council had hailed them immediately. This is the Galactic Council Diplomatic Corps. Identify yourself and state your purpose. Helen had woken up, looked at the screen full of angry aliens, and said the first thing that came to mind. We'll file the paperwork when we get there. Then she had yawned, turned off the communicator and gone back to sleep. The council had frozen that transmission. They had analyzed it. They had run it through every translation matrix in the galaxy, and every single one had returned the same result. We will file the paperwork when we get there. But the translation software had misinterpreted paperwork as a biological pathogen. In several species languages, the closest equivalent to paperwork was a word that meant slow-acting viral agent designed to destroy bureaucratic infrastructure. And when we get there, was interpreted as, we are already en route with the delivery mechanism. The council had spent 2 weeks panicking. They had convened emergency sessions. They had deployed intelligence assets. They had done everything except actually talk to a human and ask what paperwork meant, because that would have been logical, and the council had not used logic as a primary decision-making tool in over 800 years. By the time they realized their mistake, the invasion authorization had already been filed, Gorm had already been appointed, and Vec had already begun his quiet sabotage. Diplomacy had been doomed from the start. Phase 5, False Victory and Final Twist. Elias Vance stood in the center of the Galactic Council chamber. 14,000 species stared at him. The collective pulsed a terrified white. 0, Elias said. Nothing happened. The council waited. Nothing continued to happen. Elias reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a second piece of paper. This one was much longer. It had staples. It had a cover sheet. It had a little sticky note on the front that said, "For your immediate attention, EV. By the authority granted to me under Galactic Commons Code Title 14, Section 7, Paragraph 12, Elias read aloud. I hereby invoke the emergency stay of execution provision. The gasbag prosecutor deflated entirely. That provision only applies if the invading force has failed to maintain proper authorization paperwork, Elias finished. Yes, I know. He held up the paper. At 1400 hours today, the invasion authorization known as Form 7 Gamma expired due to non-renewal. The deadline for renewal was missed by approximately, let's see, he checked his watch, 14 minutes and 32 seconds. The council erupted. Silence, the collective's voice boomed. Ambassador Vance, how could you possibly know the status of our military authorization? Elias smiled again. This time it was a nice smile. The kind of smile a man wears when he has out-paperworked an entire galaxy. Your intelligence officers, he said, have been intercepting my personal communications, but you forgot something. He pulled out a third piece of paper. So have I. He held it up. It was a document titled Intergalactic Regulatory Body, Form 12 Alpha, Authorization to Monitor Foreign Military Communications. Signed, dated, notarized, filed in triplicate, with a little heart in the top corner, drawn by Margaret. I've been monitoring your monitoring, Elias said, legally, for 3 weeks. Every time one of your officers read my social media posts, I filed a report. Every time your analysts analyzed my coffee preferences, I filed a report. Every single violation of my privacy rights under Galactic Commons Code. He flipped to a page covered in checkmarks. All 247 of them, perfectly documented. The collective flickered through 17 colors in 3 seconds. None of them were good. What do you want? The collective whispered. Elias folded his papers. I want you to refile the invasion authorization, properly, with all the correct forms, all 17,000 of them, and I want you to wait the mandatory 90-day processing period before any military action can be taken. 90 days. Yes, that's how long it takes the Intergalactic Regulatory Body to approve a Category 3 planetary anomaly sterilization. I checked. Page 14,000, subsection B, paragraph 7. The council was dead silent. Elias looked around the chamber. In 90 days, he said, I will return, and I will have more papers, because my species, he paused, thinking of Margaret's sourdough and Lena's laugh and pickles eating socks. My species is very, very good at paperwork. He turned and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, 14,000 alien species watched a single human leave. And somewhere in the back, Ambassador Vec the Glut filed a formal request for a promotion, citing his critical role in preventing an illegal military action and attaching 17 pages of glowing self-evaluation. The request was approved within the hour. Gorm the Unbearable was reassigned to waste management. 3 days later, on a beach on Earth, Elias Vance sat in a folding chair. Margaret was building a sandcastle with Lena. Pickles was trying to eat a seashell. The sun was warm. The waves were gentle. The world was not, in fact, ending. Elias' phone buzzed. He looked at the screen. Message from unknown sender. 90 days we will be watching. The collective. Elias typed back. Bring snacks, and don't forget Form 7 Gamma. It expires again in 45 days. E. He put the phone down, picked up a turkey sandwich and took a bite. It was the best sandwich he had ever eaten. Margaret looked over. Everything okay? Elias smiled. Yeah, he said, everything's fine. He looked at the waves. Just paperwork.